Hello everyone! It has been 2 seasons since the last one, so here's another annual-ish meta report on the current state of archetypes based on 7 main keywords. Once again, I'll go into details about what the last 2 seasons brought, as well as Vaishmael, which wasn't mentioned last time, and how team building usually goes for each keyword. But first, a few clarifications. This report will mostly go into details for teams in modes other than Mirror Dungeon. This is especially true due to the keywords galore teams you can now play in them without the least trouble. This will also not take into account railway buffs for obvious reasons. So story bosses and dungeons mostly. Also, those 2 seasons have started introducing a lot more double keyword IDs. A lot of them still have one predominance, like Blood Fiends having Rupture, but nobody cares. I'll mention combinations when it's relevant, though IDs individually having conditionals mixing both keywords help to fit them in several teams. Anyway, let's just get into it, going in order, so starting with Burn. Burn is still the keyword without a season or full intervalo dedicated to it. Yet. During Season 5 and 6, Burn received 8 IDs, but all of them have been really great for the archetype. Almost. Fireface Gregor bringing huge damage and infliction, same with Aisho's Cliff on AoE as well, Sang having easy speed conditionals, Liu's Sang offering great SP support with reasonable damage, LC falls with a weird sacrifice setup for massive AoE nuke, great for speedruns, and Capo Mersul being just amazing. So this just solidified the archetype from being solid but with questionable IDs to solid with great IDs. But the biggest addition probably lies in the egos. While Indican's Trial offer an all-in-one package, not that great, Valpurgis struck once again by giving the already key Magic Bullet Otis a matching ego, exploding Dark Flame infliction and setup, rendering the slower setup null and inflicting more every turn with passive as well. Plus it's a nice skill setup. So all in all, Burn didn't hit that much, but it did hit well. Team building has been mostly replacing older IDs with newer ones. So Fire Fist, Magic Bullet, and Capo Mersul tend to be the most picked ones, as well as Liu Yisang and Dawn Sinclair, the former bringing the latter great SP support. Sinclair isn't as mandatory though with Fire Fist burn count infliction, but you might still want him for AoE. LC Faust is great to play if you can deal with her, Leo Rodion is still solid and has another burn ego to play with, and while Leo Ryoshu isn't as good as the others, Force Match Flame and Forest for the Flames are still great egos. Special mention for a latest ID with Force Match Flame if you can afford the sync cost. Liu Ishmael is also concerned with Outdoor Blossom Star. The rest of techs are up to you, and if you want to bring one of Sinclair's other burn IDs is also up to you, with mention for some replenishing Mersul's ammo with Pride Rays, which Burn has quite a bit of. It crossed up with Poise with Dawn but nothing real. However, Mersault and Sinclair thumb IDs brought a mix with Tremor in the form of Scorch. Playing Mersault alone is enough to get most of the thing going though, with his Infliction and Capote bringing Tremor up to Burn, so playing a Burn comp with it is probably better than the other way around. If you add a good count Infliction with several Tremor bursts, like maybe Regret Faust with Everlasting, you might have a nice payoff. Burn is also mixed up with Rupture with Aisho's Cliff and Sinclair, who can bring Onglu in. Yes, you're gonna hear that often. There are shenanigans with the 3 of them in rotations, but don't expect Rupture from it, being limited to Burn. Now on to Bleed, one of the biggest winners of those past seasons. A lot of Season 5 being dedicated to it, and its new sub-archetype, Blood Feast with Blood Fiends. The crew took up most of the archetype to itself, or at least Dawn and Rodia's duo, with the recent addition of Prince Mersault also being a great idea solidifying it. But that's not the only thing that the keyword received. New Kurokomos joined as well, with very good utility and general strength. They are boosting the old ones, but it's not that relevant. Otherwise we got another middle member, though not too relevant in most Bleed comps yet, the N-Corp crew with Yisang and Ryoshu, though very different from the crazy N-Corp, and having also very different playstyles, period. And the newest Valpurgis edition, Nighthole's Gregor. Also very quick Shim Faust mention. So quite a few things accompanied by a few egos. So we're not gonna mention Lasso and Fell Bullet. Quickly say that newer Snails inflict some nails, which is nice, and just focus on both new valves on Season 5 Battle Pass, Yearning Mere Kalas. Dawn's version just brought the newest, biggest AoE nuke at the time, while Mersaults was a great way to deal very high bleed damage onto one target, the only problem being underwhelming IDs until, well, the new one. Nowadays, Bleed has very powerful teams based around it, especially Blood Fiends. So about team building. With everything Bleed received and what it already had, you have quite a few possibilities for your choices. The most common one is Blood Fiends, with between 3 to 5 of them. Dawn, Rhodia and Mersault are very strong core, and you might want those 3 in every team to be fair, especially with Sanguine Desire being key for bleed count. You can add Barber Otis for additional damage and Priest Greg for tankiness and self-bleed procs. Then you can complete the teams with several options, like the Kurokumo duo for good mix of damage and infliction, though you would want both of them often. Ringsang is still relevant to this day, at least for the count infliction, same for Rep Ryoshu for potency. Then it's up to your fancy. Thing is, you can remove some to put other combinations, like the N-Corp duo, still a bit weird but fun with some potential, or play the newer Nighthall's Gregor. Overall, you would want enough bleed infliction for the number of coins the enemy possesses, and you might either want more skills damage or more bleed infliction, depending on your main source of damage. Talking about it, I should mention Tremor Hemorrhage, another Tremor type, mixed with bleed. We now have 2 instances of it with both Ryoshu and Gregor, but since it's still relatively new, it's hard to tell how relevant it will be, especially because bleed wants enemies to attack and Tremor stagger them. So yeah, more about it in Tremor. Meanwhile, Blood is still a thing, and while Fellbullet, Yisang and She-Faust aren't the greatest for it, Thoracal Jazz help it a lot, but more about it on the Poise side. A few IDs also have Rupture in their kits, but this is only usable in MD really. So now on to Tremor. Since Vi Ishmael, Tremor didn't receive that many IDs. In fact, the ones it received made it weird. In Season 5, Vi Sinclair was alone, and with the previous one, they followed the tanking in Tremor stuff. But in Season 6, we got Tico Potis as a pure Tremor ID, bring another Time Moratorium, and then the rest was mixed with other keywords for some reason. Some mixed it with Burn to make Tremor Scourge, and Ryoshu and Nighthall's Gregor mixed it with Bleed into Hemorrhage. Yesho Yisang mixed it with Rupture with Concussion, where it allows Loldu to be used there. And Jong Ishmael mixed it with Sinking once more. Overall, they can be strong IDs, but I don't know how well they mix together, having vastly different scenes and effects. While there is no distinct keyword for it, a few conditions have been put for stagger and low moral or panic on targets to combine them. Well, mostly Christmas Nightmares. Talking about Eagles, those 2 are okay, but Heathcliff's Asymmetrical Inertia and especially Mersault's Crushbound Past were great additions for the keyword, alongside the newer collab Egos, Tidal Elegy and mostly Unbridled Glory. Well, all that to say, Tremor as a single keyword didn't change too much, mostly getting mixed up with everything, still getting a few powerhouses on the way, especially on Eagles. Regarding team building, well, it hasn't changed much from before, and is currently just watching the power creep happen elsewhere. But at least Reverb is still great, so Onglus, Cavernous Wailing and Faust Everlasting are still key to the teams, though their associated IDs not as much. People have been replacing Regret Faust by A-Show for its insane power and high speed, using a lot of the setup at the start of the turn, and with A-Show Yisang it's easy to bring in Lord Onglu as well instead of Hero Divier. Accompanying the broken duo is some Mersault, another great addition with its egos. And then we find back the few usual culprits possible, like Hero Divier Ryoshu on bench or on field, Zwei Ishmael, though the new Valp ID is also an option, a potential Time Moratorium user among the T-Corp IDs, while Moral Office is still as relevant as ever. The pleasures of this card. The rest of the IDs like specialization into Tremor mostly, being mixed with other keywords and therefore having subpar Tremor use. Well, as long as Tremor's main damage source will be Reverb, hard to do much more. But I gotta mention the mix-up. The ones with Rupture and Sinking are not a real thing at the moment, more benefiting a few IDs and egos, and allowing them to be played in both archetypes, but only one keyword at a time. Tremor potentially brings support with Decay, for example. Scourge for Burn is more handled on the Burn side as mentioned earlier, mostly due to Mersol's Capote bringing Tremor potency up to burns, and not the opposite. Meanwhile for bleed, as mentioned earlier, the combination can be a bit awkward, and outside of MD and fun shenanigans, will need more support to be actually strong. It's hard to tell if the combinations will ever be relevant, or will mostly stay at one keyword for additional semi-burn bleed procs or Wraithless Tremor damage. And now, the second winner of those 2 seasons, Rupture. Season 6 was dedicated to it, even more than before I would say, with the whole A-Show crew filling the whole thing up. In fact, the Rupture team is generally mostly an A-Show team. The culprits? Freaking Mouse, with Deathrite Haste offering so much Rupture count, and especially Faust being able to offer it like it's a Steam sale. Alongside the 9 A-Shows right now in the game are Jia Ishmael, mostly mixed with Yi Sang for passive reasons, Drifting Ryoshu with potential Rupture potency, and their lord, Onglu, bringing the whole thing together even more by being the powerhouse he is. A few IDs have some Rupture infliction in their kits, but it being really low and having no benefits, they are mostly confined to MD min-maxing. A mention for Deviat Sinclair. Just a mention. But a real mention for SE Yi Sang's sacrifice shenanigans, which do inflict nice Rupture, though is mostly used somewhere else. The keyword got a few EGOs as well, but barely any other real interaction with the keyword outside coin power, and some low infliction. I guess I should mention Onglu's Tears of the Tarnished Blood ability to combo with his ID for high damage, and mostly Red Sheet being good at dealing damage as well while maintaining count. While talking about Red Sheet, the biggest change to the archetype is, definitely, the death of Talisman Sinclair. His utter brokenness carrying the keyword could not last forever, causing many irrecoverable casualties on the way, and at the start of Season 6, it was killed, nerfed to the ground. Now instead of finding it in teams, you can find it laying in some gutter. Well, its support is still useful. So a great way to transition into team building. You can now remove Red Sheet Sinclair from your team. In fact, you can remove about every older Rupture ID and replace them with A-Shows. There is no way to go wrong with it. The priorities are the Mouse for their Rupture count, as well as Lord Onglu for more skill 3s. After that, up to you. You can bring the Shichun Wei combo, Yi Sang's ID having some nice skill 3 and Rupture buff, especially with Dimension Shredder. C's don't have the best infliction but bring some nice damage, and Esho Sinclair is well under them outside MD I'd say, and you would want him to start on bench in any case. His cleave doesn't help Rupture but does bring good damage, and you would probably leave Dawn for sinking. Eshos have the ability to switch with Onglu, so there are some shenanigans there as well. Of the other and older IDs remaining, Deviat Rhodia still has some nice damage and general utility for short situations, Lantern Dawn can still maintain a good count while having a Red Sheet Ego, WE Sang still has a nice count infliction with Dimension Shredder, and we're not really mentioning the rest. I guess mention for 70's Cliff's potential infliction still being pretty good, which could help, but Drifting Ryoshu might steal the spot. The main question is what your main damage source is. If you want lots from Rupture itself, you might deviate from old A-Show's approach, which is better for raw damage, Rupture being mostly for conditionals, though it can stack a bit thanks to some IDs. Regarding mix-ups, don't. Well, it's mostly that Rupture maintenance is already hard enough. The situation is mainly Lord Onglu being a parasite in other keywords with his A-Show synergies, mostly Burn and Tremor. We don't talk about syncing, maintaining both at once is very likely a fruitless endeavor outside MD. There is one that really developed though, being with Poise. Quite a few IDs got Poise with their Rupture, which makes them playable in both. However, there's no real mix-up possible, as you would want all IDs to be able to inflict Rupture, and you want Maos mostly, which almost don't have Poise, Faust being an exception. It's mostly some IDs function with Poise as well, and you can throw in a Thoracalgia to help with it. Also, Charge got some Rupture IDs, but nothing interesting outside WE Sang. Alright, enough about A-Shows. Let's move on to syncing. And similar to Tremor, it got most of its best pieces during Season 4, and didn't get much in the past 2, about 5 IDs, but probably got its newest, most important ID in Valpurgis, being Knight of Despair Rodion, having the most insane syncing count infliction ever in our -SP form, enough to carry the whole keyword by herself. Almost. The other additions aren't too important, Ishmael being the most noteworthy as a side grade of Molar, and Aisho Dawn is a nice damage support with her panic time. Even ego-wise, not many additions too noteworthy, Christmas Nightmare being fine but very contested, Ishmael's Tidal Elegy being the most interesting one as a Gloom Nuke. So overall, still a good archetype from its Season 4 glow up, but Power Creep also left its member in a slightly underperforming state for now, so the status is so good that it doesn't matter that much, and it's probably slightly easier to use than Rupture right now. For team building, again, it hasn't changed much from last time. First, you choose a mode, aka AE Sang. Spice Bush being more specialized in one high burst after rushing the infliction, while Solemn Lament can build up damage more steadily. This choice mostly matters for how fast you want the infliction to go, like Mola Ishmael versus Jungle Fist. Otherwise, the Wuthering Heights crew is still good to use, mostly Butler Otis for Echoes of the Manor, Edgar Hare Gregor with Solemn Lament, and Wild Hunt Iscliffe for his very high payoff. In most teams now, you really want to bring Code Rhodia though, and while not mandatory anymore, Rhymeshank and Yisang's Bygone Days are still good egos to have, alongside a few others. To round up the team, you could add a few DHs, Onglu probably being the generally better one right now, or the new Aisho Dawn. Syncing doesn't mix much with other archetypes yet. As said earlier, the relation with Tremor is only for some conditions, like Christmas Nightmares, and there's no real reason to play a full mix outside MD. Same thing for Poise and Charge, which have a few ideas, but those are mostly individual cases. And once more, I doubt Rupture syncing will ever exist outside MD. Moving on to Poise, I have to mention that both it and Charge are still pretty selfish statuses, not having many interactions between IDs with a keyword, so teams based around it mostly benefit from external factors like Railway 5 buffs or ego gifts. However, I'll start with the egos this time, as the most important thing that Poise teams received during Season 5 were Thorakalgia egos, offering a real team-wide Poise support, more important and reliable than Blind Obsession, making a Poise team have an actual interest, and helping lots of older IDs with subpar Poise game. Meanwhile, Onglu's To Remain Oneself is a nice addition for high damage, and Felbullet Yisang offers some pretty funny shenanigans, especially for speedruns. But for IDs, well, there are a few in the Aisho crews and affiliates, which make for good additions and a nice core with Onglu, as well as some other individual IDs better or worse, but the most impactful addition is the full sub-duo of Onglu and Iscliffe, offering very high damage and payoff as long as you have both together. So overall, a few elements were added to Poise, mostly updating it, and Thorakalgia cemented it as a real team outside Blade Lineage. Well, talking about them, there are two main possibilities for team building. Blade Lineage still is relevant, either as a full team or mostly as a core of 2 or 3, but otherwise the strongest Poise teams will be mostly constituted of strong Poise IDs. So this mostly include the full stop duos, then potentially Lord Lu and his crew, as well as the newer Sank IDs. You would want one of the Thorakalgias available at least in most cases. Ryoshu wants a sacrifice to perform well, which is often SC Yisang, being killed very easily, but if you can afford it with a Butler or Drifting ID, it's really good. Faust's version is easier to use, but both of their Poise IDs at the moment have their own shortcomings, though nothing prevents you from just playing your Mao ID anyway. There are a lot of relevant Pierce IDs with Sank, so it's easy to make a Poise Pierce team as well. Afterwards, you can always make some variations, like with Pequod IDs. Talking about those, they still mostly belong to Blois, aka Bleed and Poise, which did get a few additions, but mostly stay a bit niche. There's still variation that can be considered, including Pequods, with or without Encore Sang, Twin Hook Gregor, one of the Fausts, and a few more Bleed IDs, but it would like some newer, more interesting additions. Poise has a few IDs with other keywords, but they mostly belong into only one of the two keywords and don't really make other archetypes, most of the time Poise being a condition to get the status going with on-crit effects, for example. Finally, last and kinda least is Charge, which is probably the archetype in the most in need of a renewal. It started with multicracks in Season 4, but it got very few IDs during the last 2 seasons, 5 in fact. Code Rodion mostly gains from syncing though, so the ones really working on charge are the 4 others, R-Corps being okay, W-Corp is clearly being good, but replacing Multicrack, which was one of the newer ones already. The bigger addition is Queen of Hatred Dawn, which, with its Seago, is a great addition with nice payoff and AoE. The ID also started the mix between Charge and the Envy crew, which was kinda detached from it and mostly using its IDs to help filling the many missing slots, bringing back Envy into Charge. And I don't have much more to say, since the Queen of Hatred ego was also the only ego for Charge, being great for the ID, but that's about it. So once again, Charge became the least supported archetype recently, and with all the power creep happening, is in need of a renewal, so the damage of his ID is currently not fully matching the damage from other archetypes with their statuses, Charge still doing nothing by itself, and not having many team synergies. The newer IDs have been a step in the right direction, and the status is one of the best in MD Extreme due to high rolls, but that's about it. For team building, like Poise, it doesn't have many synergies between its members. Multicrack Heathcliff as an ID was one of the only ones, though he's got a W-Corp ID which is stronger in general, so it's up to you if you prefer the support to help some IDs like Multicrack Faust with one of the members you would still want. You would also want QH Dawn with their egos in any case, having access to several charged egos. W Otis also works nicely as a support, and W Rushu is still relevant. I guess you would want R-Corp on glue even if he's a bit slow to set up along, and fill up some of the charge IDs left depending on your need. There's also an Envy variation with the middle members, mostly Sinclair and Mersault, which works pretty well with QH Dawn's supply and demand of Envy, and allow pretty consistent Envy chains, but we will see how this one goes later with more middle members. Charge teams overall would include IDs that gain damage and benefit from charge, rather than being used to inflict other statuses. As for mix-up, due to the lack of charge IDs in general, there's about nothing new. Charge syncing is barely a thing, same for charge bleed. While there are a few Rupture ones, the infliction is still barely noteworthy and mostly for flavor, as well as for MD optimization. Only WE Sang being actually usable in Rupture. Charge is still mostly a resource that acts as a conditional in those cases. So that's gonna close my report for today. Overall, most statuses grew, some more than others. It can be argued that some are lagging behind, but you can be sure that with time and a proper season for them, every keyword will receive more support to bring them to the top. With enough additions, some statuses are even seeing variations in teams, often being based on damage source, raw damage or status damage, due to newer IDs ever increasing power. This can be mostly seen in the most recently supported archetypes Bleed and Rupture. Even talking about IDs damage, comps can be different when focusing on different scenes or damage types. More and more IDs and egos are made to be able to fit in multiple keywords, sharing conditionals. However, that often means they can be lackluster on one of them, but it's on a case-by-case basis. Don't expect to do many teams without keywords though, as they have been fully integrated into every ID's kit pretty much. Well, not like you can just play a bunch of the strongest stuff, but you probably won't get as much value out of them, and with more and more IDs filling the weaker spots in each keyword, it's gonna be more and more advised to do so. There's always space for some shenanigans though. But we'll see how it develops as we go into Season 7, witnessing maybe a new interesting keyword association? The sweet smell of burnt flesh. And that's the end of this video. Thanks for watching. Final message, Season 7 is finally coming, and with it maybe the first burn season? I suppose at least. Well, time will tell how wrong I might be. There will still be a Season 6 review before that, for fun stats and a new rating scale, which is what I'm gonna call it. Well, look forward to it. In any case, see you next time, and keep your sanity high in this slow descent into the inferno.